Hey, good evening, folks. We're going to get started at 6 p.m. sharp. Just let people filter into the room. Good evening, folks. We're going to get started at 6 p.m. sharp. Give another minute or two for folks to get into the room. Hey, good evening, folks. We're going to give everybody else another minute or two to get into the room. Poppy, I also see the translator in the room as well, if you could help them out. Hey, good evening, everyone. We are just working on getting the translator set up, and we'll get started in a minute. Thanks very much, Julio. We will add you. Okay, great. Looks like we're good to go. There's going to be another interpreter joining us, and we're going to be recording this meeting too. So Poppy, if you can start the record.
You're all set?
All right. Great. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the LyondellBasell Equistar Title V Renewal Public Information Session. Thanks very much for coming tonight. I'm Tony Bianchini, a principal consultant with Environmental Resources Management. We're an environmental consulting firm with offices in New Jersey, the United States, and across the world. We're here tonight for a public hearing on the LyondellBasell Equistar facility in Edison, New Jersey, and the facility's Title V permit renewal. I'll be facilitating the stakeholder outreach session tonight, along with representatives from the site. Tonight's information session is part of the facility's compliance with New Jersey's proposed environmental justice law in New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection's Administrative Order 2021-25 on obtaining meaningful public participation during the permit renewal process. Our objective tonight is to provide details about the facility and its Title V permit renewal application and give the public a chance to comment and ask questions. We've been planning tonight's session for a while and look forward to a collaborative discussion with the community. Please note, as I mentioned before, this meeting tonight is being recorded and will be available for playback after tonight's session. It'll also be available. It's also available in English and in Spanish. The next slide, please. Great. Tonight's session is going to involve the following items. First, the team at Equistar and ERM will be introducing ourselves. I'll be discussing the ground rules for tonight to make this as a collaborative discussion as possible. Dan Feemster, Equistar's plant manager, will be talking about the facility and the company's work in Edison. Dan will also be providing more details about the Title V permit renewal and the permitting process. I'll be providing more detail about the public engagement and outreach process. And finally, at the end, you'll have a chance to ask questions and make public comments on the record. There's a couple of acronyms that you'll hear tonight. We're going to do the best we can to spell them out throughout. One is NJDEP, that's New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. The other is EPA, that's Environmental Protection Agency, if you're not familiar with either of those terms. Can I have the next slide, please? Great. Next, we'll have some introductions and opening remarks from LyondellBasell and Environmental Resources Management. Dan and I will be giving the presentation tonight, and joining us to answer some technical questions from the audience is Savita Babar from LyondellBasell and Josh Hemperly from ERM. Dan, can you introduce yourself?
Good evening. I'm Dan Feemster. I'm the site manager of the LyondellBasell Equistar facility here in Edison. I've been with the company about 5 years.
Great. Savita?
Yes, good evening. My name is Savita Babar. I'm the technical manager. I've been with LyondellBasell Equistar Edison, New Jersey for 31 years. Thank
Great,
you.
thanks very much. As I mentioned before, I'm Tony Bianchini, a principal consultant with ERM. Been involved in stakeholder outreach and communications for a good 20 years and have lived in New Jersey most of my life for nearly 40 years. Looking forward to tonight's session with the public. Josh, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Josh Hemperly. I'm a senior air quality permitting consultant with ERM. I live and work locally in central New Jersey and worked closely with the facility on these permit applications.
Great. Thanks, Josh. Next slide. So here's some ground rules for tonight. We're joined both by people that are calling in on the telephone and also on Zoom online on their devices. During tonight's session, all participants are going to be muted during the presentation unless you're called upon. Of course, you're free to raise your hand during the presentation and make comments in the chat. We'd really appreciate that. If you do have a question during the public comment portion or during the meeting, please raise your hand using the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. If you're dialing in on the phone to raise your hand, press *9. We're going to be reading out the comments that are in the chat during the public comment portion first. If you'd like to come off mute regarding your chat comments, please do so, or I will read them out for Dan and the team to answer. During the public comment portion, each commenter is going to have 3 minutes to make a comment. I'll give you a warning at the 2-minute mark. Once you're called upon, please make sure that you're unmuted and share your name, hometown address, and any professional affiliation if you have any. If you're calling in on the phone, just to make sure you're unmuted, you press the *6 button, and on Zoom, it's right next to your name. After tonight's meeting, as I mentioned in the chat, please email your comments to Equistar Edison Facility. That's EQUISTAR EDISONFACILITY at LyondellBasell.com. It's LYONDELLBASELL.com, or you can mail it to the mailing address that's listed in the chat or the slides. As I mentioned before, finally, this meeting is being recorded and will be provided to the Department of Environmental Protection after the meeting in compliance with the regulations. Next slide, please. Next, we're going to have Dan talk more about the facility in Edison.
Good evening. Again, I'm Dan Feemster. I'm the site manager of the LyondellBasell Equistar Edison facility. It is located at 340 Meadow Road in Edison, New Jersey, near the Raritan River. The site was built in 1929 and manufactures catalysts used in the production of polypropylene and polyethylene plastics. The plastics are found in a variety of everyday items, things like automotive parts, medical devices, home furnishings, toys, and containers. The site serves the company's customers worldwide and has recently expanded to increase capacity. The site employs approximately 120 employees and contractors from Edison, Middlesex County, and the state of New Jersey. Next slide, please. Seen here is an aerial photo of the facility and the surrounding area. The site is located in the Heller Industrial Park in Edison with many other industrial business operations. Next slide, please. At our facility in Edison, we believe in transparent communication and operations with our stakeholders. In 2022, we donated thousands of dollars to several important organizations in the city of Edison, including the fire department, the Chamber of Commerce, Middlesex Community College, Middlesex Jewish Community Center, and others mentioned on this slide. Some examples of our volunteer efforts in Edison community are St. Thomas Aquinas High School in Edison, where employees assisted students in science, technology, and environmental activities and education. We have participated in the Adopt a Highway program, where volunteers picked up and bagged trash along Route 27. Employees have volunteered to help clean up the park and adjacent waterfront at the nearby Edison Municipal Boat Basin. Savita Babar, who is with me on the call, sits on the advisory board to the Middlesex Community College's Process Technology program. Finally, we are a proud participant and supporter of the Edison Chamber of Commerce. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Tony, who is going to talk a little bit more about the specifics of tonight's meeting.
Great. Next slide. Thanks so much, Stan. So why are we here tonight? In 2020, our governor, Phil Murphy, signed a new environmental justice law that required the Department of Environmental Protection to explore public health impacts during environmental permit reviews for new, upgraded, or expanded facilities. The implementing regulations are still being finalized by the department, but currently industrial facilities that are seeking to renew certain permits must comply with the Administrative Order 2021-25 until the new regulation is finalized. It's important to remember that the LyondellBasell Equistar facility is not a newly permitted facility. Let me just repeat that. The LyondellBasell Equistar site is not a newly permitted facility. It's just the one of many facilities in Edison, Middlesex, and the state of New Jersey that is subject to the new administrative order. This administrative order is in place to ensure that industrial facilities educate their communities about their operations and obtain public input during permitting decisions, which is why we're here tonight. The DEP uses various tools to ensure that environmental justice is considered during permitting processes. And you can find out more information about the DEP's EJ mapping tool on this website that's located on the slide. Next slide, please. So based on the new environmental justice law and our commitment to being a responsible community neighbor, we have worked to inform stakeholders about the permit application process and opportunities to make public comment in many different ways. We sent notifications to neighbors, local, county, and state officials, Edison business and community organizations about our meeting tonight. We put web postings on the DEP's environmental justice calendar, also on the LyondellBasell Edison plant webpage. We put newspaper ads on January 13th in the Star Ledger and a secondary Spanish language newspaper. Tonight's information session is an opportunity for us to share more details about the facility and details about our permit renewal, and provide a chance for you, the stakeholders, to ask questions and make comments. After tonight's meeting, we will work individually with stakeholders to address comments and questions that are submitted. We will provide a report on these comments, as well as a recording and transcript after tonight's session to the DEP. Please continue to submit your comments from after tonight's session until March 31st to the email address I mentioned before, or the mailing address. It's also on your screen or in your chat box. Next slide, Dan is going to talk about permit renewal details.
Thanks, Tony. This site has been in existence for 90+ years, and we have operated with a Title V operating permit under the Environmental Protection Agency's Clean Air Act since the inception of that program. Title V operating permits are required by the Environmental Protection Agency's Clean Air Act. This permit covers all major sources of air emissions and defines the steps a facility must do to control these sources. Title V permits are required for certain facilities that meet a certain threshold for emissions. The Edison facility does meet this threshold, which is why our facility operates with a Title V permit. The Title V permit includes emission limits from specific sources. To help control our air emissions at the facility has 6 air emissions control devices, including 4 condensers and 2 scrubbers that work to safely control air emissions. Condensers are air emissions control devices that use condensation to remove byproducts from the gas stream. Scrubbers are air control devices that use liquid to remove byproducts from the gas stream. The facility is currently operating under an application shield approved on October 7th, 2021, until this Title V renewal is approved. We take our environmental responsibilities seriously and communicate with our regulatory agencies, including the Environmental Protection Agency and the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, on a frequent basis regarding our environmental emissions and compliance. Shown in this table here are Equistar facilities' maximum emissions permitted from all significant sources of operations. It is key to note that the actual emissions from our site are lower than the maximum allowed under this operating permit. Next slide, please. LyondellBasell Equistar submitted its Title V permit renewal, BOP 18-0002, to the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection on time, and it was deemed administratively complete. This Title V renewal consolidates our existing operating permit and modifications that were previously approved by the department into one unifying permit. There have been a number of modifications to our past permit that have been approved previously by the NJDEP, and these are being consolidated into this current Title V permit renewal. Below is some more information and details regarding our permit modifications that show LyondellBasell's effort and commitment to compliance with the regulations. We had a major modification, which we expanded production on the site by adding a new catalyst production line we call T2. T2 added various pieces of equipment to the permit when it was constructed to increase production capacity. Emissions from this unit are controlled by a packed tower scrubber, which uses a liquid to remove byproducts from the gas stream. This permit modification, known as BOP 18-0003, was approved by the NJDEP. Also listed are our minor modifications to our Title V permit. Overall, these modifications did not call for major changes to our permit. In the first modification, called BOP 19-0002, we added a feed hopper and donor tank. This modification was approved by the NJDEP. Next, we removed and consolidated some tanks on our site, resulting in a net decrease in emissions. This modification, called BOP 20-0001, was approved by the NJDEP. We modified the height of our boiler stack in our permit to reflect the actual layout of the plant. This modification, called BOP 210002, was approved by the NJDEP. Finally, we reclassified a piece of equipment that was previously classified as an air control device. This was an administrative change to our permit. This modification, called BOP 210004, was approved by the NJDEP. So in summary, we are taking our existing Title V permit, consolidating it with previously approved permit modifications, and combining it into one unified Title V permit. On behalf of LyondellBasell Equistar, I would like to thank you for being here tonight, and I look forward to answering some of your questions and listening to your comments shortly. Tony?
Thanks very much, Dan. Next slide. LyondellBasell is committed to being transparent with its stakeholders throughout this public comment process. The company will continue to communicate with community stakeholders, including local officials, organizations, and our neighbors. As I mentioned before, the public comment process opened on January 13th. Following tonight's session, the public will have an additional 30+ days to comment on our permit application, and the comment period will close on March 31st. LyondellBasell will respond to timely submitted comments from stakeholders and work with the Department of Environmental Protection on any additional analysis that's required. As I mentioned previously, after tonight's session, to make a public comment, please send an email with your specific comment, question, or concern to Equistar Edison Facility at lyondellbasell.com, or mail them to LyondellBasell Equistar Facility, 340 Meadow Road in Edison, New Jersey. It's 08837. Attention, Jim Butler. In your comment, please include your name and your contact information so we can get back to you. Next slide, please. So now is the time for public comment. Thanks everyone for joining us tonight. To recap the ground rules I mentioned earlier, we have some people on telephone and also on Zoom. If you do have a question or a comment, please raise your hand. If there's I don't know if there's any questions in the chat right now, but if there's any questions in the chat, we'll read those first, and then we'll take questions from people that raise their hand. As I also mentioned, each commenter will have 3 minutes to make a public comment, and we'll keep track and give you a warning at the 2-minute mark. And once again, we ask you to introduce yourself, your hometown address, and your affiliation. If you could please provide some detailed contact information in a private chat with one of our co-hosts, Poppy Milligan, that you'll see in the panelist section, just so we can respond to you in a proper fashion. Does anybody have any public comments? I don't see anything in the chat. Please just raise your hand. Once again, you could raise your hand if you're calling in on the phone by pressing *9, or raise your hand at the prompt at the bottom of the screen. Great. Looks like Adam has a question. Adam Glenn. Go ahead, Adam.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can. Thanks very much.
Okay. I wasn't sure. I was having some technical difficulties. I am Adam Glenn. I am a resident of Edison Township for nearly 30 years, having raised a family here for that approximately 30 years. I am presently the Chief Executive Officer of the Jewish Community Center of Middlesex County, located on Oak Tree Road in Edison. And for those of you who are familiar, the JCC has been an important organization within the Edison and Middlesex County community for about 40 years. I appreciate the efforts that those of you from LyondellBasell have placed in informing and providing opportunities for the community to engage with you in this process. I understand the importance of the scrutiny that is placed upon companies and industries like yours with respect to these permitting and renewal processes. But I think it is important for the community to recognize a few things. If I'm not mistaken, LyondellBasell has been in this community for more than 90 years. I don't think it is fair to minimize the importance of the benefits of the presence of a company like LyondellBasell in the community. I think the record is clear that you have gone a long way above and beyond for many, many years in ensuring the safety of the community, in ensuring the compliance. And we are fortunate in Edison Township to have a good corporate citizen in LyondellBasell. Not only do you continue to support the employment of, from what I understand, many generations of Edison residents, but LyondellBasell continues to make community involvement, to make community support a part of their corporate and communal philosophy. And that is something that I can tell you, not only as a resident, but as someone who is engaged in the social service community within Edison Township, is not always what we deal with some of our corporate and business community partners. LyondellBasell has been a staunch supporter of education, of STEM, of environmental programs within Edison Township. I can tell you from the standpoint of the Jewish Community Center, LyondellBasell has been very supportive of our early childhood and preschool programs, of our STEM and environmental sustainability programs. And frankly, we are quite appreciative, because without LyondellBasell, we would not be able to provide those programs to our youngest generation. So I want to make sure, and I wanted to be part of this meeting to ensure that the work that LyondellBasell has done within this community and continues to do to improve the lives of the residents of Edison Township was noted. At the same time that we, of course, want to ensure that the company continues to comply and take the necessary steps to ensure safety, both for the residents and for our environment. So I appreciate it. I appreciate the work that all of you are doing. And I appreciate the fact that you are an important part of this community. So thank you for that. Thank you for the opportunity to speak for a couple of moments.
Thank you, Adam, for those comments. Again, being part of the community for 90 plus years, we've seen and been a part of so much, and it's great to have that participation in the community, and we're proud to be a part of that. So thank you for those comments.
Not at all.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Adam. We appreciate it.
Sure.
Does anybody else have any comments? Please raise your hand once again. If you're dialing in, press *9. But on the Zoom devices, just press the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. And we're definitely going to stick around for at least 5 more minutes. So feel free to think of any questions or comments that you have. And then once again, you can also email it to Equistar Edison Facility at LyondellBasell.com or to our mailing address. Anybody else have any questions or comments? All right, we'll give it a few more minutes. We could put up the last slide. Thanks very much. Once again, here's the information about how to make a public comment. If anybody has a public comment, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll take you off the mute. we're going to keep the line open till at least 6:30. So if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to write them in the chat or raise your hand and come off mute. Adam asked the question. He's curious how many people are on Zoom. We have 28 people in the room.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, another minute or so. If you'd like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. Also wanted to mention there's a little button at the bottom of the webinar chat where it says to everyone, or you could change it to hosts and panelists or to everyone. So if you just want to utilize the everyone button so everyone could see your comment. Okay, anybody else? Last chance. Anybody have any questions or comments? There's a question here in the chat from Ron. Ron, do you want to come off the mute? Can't see. Hey, Ron, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
All right, go ahead.
Sure. In the last 2 years, August of 2020 and November of 2022, you've had the titanium tetrachloride leaks, and you're very close to a population center. And there's been 2 alerts to shelter in place. And fortunately, the wind has taken the chemical in a different direction. And the residents around here are very concerned, being close to such a close population density of, houses, other businesses, that one of these days you'll have a release of the gas and it will negatively impact the residential neighborhoods around you. I know so far that hasn't happened, but it's like a ticking time bomb.
Thanks for your question, Ron. Dan, do you want to address?
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate the question, Ron, and appreciate the concern. The health and safety of our workforce and the community is our first priority. We have a robust monitoring process in place, and we constantly evaluate and maintain our equipment. With regards to those leaks were thoroughly investigated and measures put in place so those specific incidents, which were different in cause, don't happen again. So appreciate that. Again, we want to, again, make sure our health and safety of the community is our first priority.
Thanks very much, Ron, for your question. I have another hand up from Laura Ulick Smith. Go ahead, Laura.
Hi, good evening. Yeah, I have a question about worst case scenario, like say there was some type of explosion. I know there's a gas line from PSE&G that runs in the same area behind our neighborhood around Silver Lake. And I don't know, what potentially could happen, worst case scenario. And, there's tons of houses around. It just seems like I don't know if you guys communicate with PSE&G about that at all, or if anything's happened with that. If not,
well, yeah, let me answer that question for you, Laura. We do contact our utilities on a fairly regular basis. As far as maintaining lines into the community, that's the utility's responsibility. The lines that are on our site are part of a very detailed inspection program. And we do maintain those in accordance with guidelines that are best practice inspections associated with API, the American Petrochemical Institute, to make sure that we have no issues with our gas lines or other utilities as well.
And Dan, you want to mention our work with Edison Emergency Services and training with them?
Sure. If things go wrong, we do utilize the services of the Edison Fire Department, as well as the Middlesex County Hazmat Team. We have on-site responders as well that are trained in both fire and hazard material response. We train together in many scenarios and drills to make sure that we're prepared should a scenario arise that needs that sort of response.
Yep. Thanks very much. Laura, do you have any follow-up questions?
No, thank you for answering.
Sure thing. Thanks for coming tonight. Anybody else have any comments or questions? Feel free to raise your hand or write a message in the chat. Definitely stick around for a couple more minutes to see if any new questions come up. Don't see anything new in the chat yet. Okay, another minute or two for people to have a chance to ask questions or make comments. Please raise your hand or type a message in the chat. We appreciate everyone coming tonight. And if anybody who made a comment tonight, if you could please send any contact information that you're feel comfortable sharing with our co-host Poppy Milliken, just so we could send you a thank you or any responses to your comments, we'd appreciate it. Right, any last minute questions or comments? I think we're gonna wrap it up now. Once again, our comment period opened on January 13th and is 60+ days. It's going to conclude on March 31st. To make a public comment, please email us at Equistar Edison Facility at LyondellBasell.com or on the mailing address in Edison that you see there. Attention, Jim Butler. Really appreciate you attending tonight and any comments that you make on the record. Have a great night.
Thank you.